Hey everyone, I'm KELSEYHEENAN and welcome to this episode of The First Hour. Today our guest is Rick Carlson. So Rick started off as a songwriter and composer. He created multiple different types of traveling choirs. He then moved into creating a children's video series that was translated into 5 languages across the world. He was also not only the creator in the songs, the stories, he also starred in this children's video series. And then he moved into a career as a pastor. So Rick is amazing for so many reasons, and he also just happens to be my dad. So it's a really fun episode to be able to connect with storytelling, but also just get to know my family a little bit more. So if you are ready, let's meet Rick. Dad, thank you so much for coming in. I'm so excited. And I would want to have you as a guest, even if you weren't my dad.
Wow, that's nice. Thank you.
Well, you have one of the most fascinating career paths, and beyond just technical career, one of the most creative minds I have ever met. And it's been eternally inspiring for me in my life. And I'm really excited to tell other people and also just learn from you in general, because your mind is different. The way you think about creating stories is different, and it can be used for so many different types of mediums, whether it's speaking and audible storytelling, whether it's writing a book or just going about anything in work. It's really cool to just observe that in you. And I've wanted to try and piece that together in my own life in so many ways. And I'm very much work in progress.
Well, thank you. I'm honored.
Yes. So, Dad, how would you describe what you do in your career?
Probably storytelling is at the heart of what I've done and what I do, whether it is writing music. Writing music is a storytelling medium in itself. You have a beginning, you have a middle, and you have an end. You have conflict, you have resolution, you have all of those things. Whether it is writing literally a story, that's a wonderful thing, and you learn the craft over time as to how to not only write for a certain medium but write for a certain audience, whether it is public speaking, teaching, preaching, whatever it might be. You learn that storytelling always engages and invites people into what you're doing. It's not just giving information. So that's been part of the joy of the journey, I guess.
I love that you said that, because you have had several different types of careers, but at the center of it, I've always been like, you are a storyteller. Mm-hmm. And that translates so well across the different careers that you've had. And why it's inspiring to me in so many ways is you've never been stuck in just one thing. You've always been multiple things and been successful at it. And so for me and for other people to be able to say, okay, here's the skill set that I have, and this can translate in so many different directions. You're never just stuck in one thing. There's always new opportunities and ways that you can transition into new things and use those skill sets. So your ability to storytell is so top notch.
Oh, you're nice.
Yeah. Well, it's true. So just kind of going through the different things that you've done. It was cool. So you retired a month ago?
Yeah.
Technically,
yeah. Some people would say, oh, he retired 6 years ago. Been mailing it in ever since.
But technically, you've had 4 weeks off of being a pastor, right, which is what you've done for 25 years?
26 years.
26 years. And leading up to that, what are some of the other things that you've done?
Well, my first love was music. And so my all the way through college was preparing me for music, and I thought that was going to be what I was going to do. And frankly, even though my dad was a pastor, your grandfather, I never really thought that that's the direction that I would go. And frankly, it was a surprise in my mid-40s when that was the call. But up until that point, I knew that I wanted to do music, and I wanted to do it with great musicians and all. Not that I didn't want to teach junior high band, but I knew that I wanted to write, and I wanted to create things that were moving inside of me. And so the first part of the career was really a career path of writing and arranging and putting together groups and recording and all of those things. As you already know, when you do one kind of thing, it leads to other kinds of things. So I was doing music and writing and all, sending groups on the road and recording and all. And it led to some opportunities to do things that I could never have imagined, which moved into video and film and some other things like that, which was fun, because then it expanded the horizon, the platform of storytelling, so that it's not just the music for me. It was being able to write scripts and stories and even do some acting and things like that.
And this is why it's so fascinating, because you started off as a songwriter and you eventually created a children's video series, puppets and all, and we'll dive into that. And you wrote all of the episodes, you wrote all of the music, and you were the lead actor in this series. You produced youth conferences of thousands and thousands of people leading the main stage. You have written countless songs, or maybe you know the number. How many songs have you written?
I have no idea. I'm sure it's more than I could count on one hand.
Very many hands, because there are so many songs that have been transformational in my life and in so many people's lives. And the video series that you created, it's so cool to see along the way. To this day, there have been people who, the show is called Quigley's Village. And to this day, people find out that you are Mr. Quigley. Mm-hmm. And they lose it. Oh my gosh, you're Mr. Quigley. Like, they are legitimately starstruck by you. And it's really cool to see over the course of the years how that has made a lasting impact on people.
It is still an amazing thing to me that, what was a dream of a group of people to provide a teaching element for young kids of values, values like patience and kindness and all of the things we want our kids to grow up with. We as a group of parents said, let's put this together. So I didn't do all the writing or any of that, but that was one chapter in our life that was really wonderful, and I didn't want it to quit. And things always are changing and emerging, but I loved it. And now for young adults your age to come up and say, "Oh, I grew up on you," is a pretty amazing thing. Yeah.
It is so cool. And it continues on, because people still watch these shows to this day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kind of going back, you started as a songwriter, mm-hmm. and you had several groups that traveled around the world, singing groups that traveled around the world with songs that you'd written, other songs as well. When did you write your first song?
I think my first actual song that I actually wrote notes to, which I've got some samples of of that somewhere in a box somewhere. But these huge big notes that my mom made a staff line, 5 lines, and then I would write the melody. I probably was 4th grader or something like that when I started thinking I could write a melody. I could do this. And you see, even though I loved piano, I couldn't play very well because I couldn't read very well. I have a kind of a form of dyslexia where the notes literally fall off the page, and I go looking for them basically.
Wow.
So even though I can write music and I can play it, I play by ear, and all, I can't really read well enough to do that. So I worked hard on hearing chords and finding them, and basically taught myself how to do music without having to be able to read it. I marvel at people who can sight read, and all. That's just not a gift that I have. So whatever part of my brain said we're going to do storytelling through music meant that I had to find a way to do it just the way my brain worked.
So when you can't read the music, are you hearing it in your head? Are you playing it and saying, "Oh, that sounds good"? Like, what does that look like when you're creating a melody?
I usually hear it in my head, the melody first. Excuse me. And like, for instance, a couple nights ago, I just had a motif, a small bite of music, and I know
In
that
your head?
in my head.
Okay.
And I can hear the chording underneath it and all, and in order for me to not forget it, I write it down somewhere, whether it's a napkin or on a computer program or whatever, so that I can get back to it. And out of a motif comes a melody. Out of a small idea comes a story. Out of you begin where your brain begins, whether it is just a picture in your mind or a sound that you hear, or sometimes I'm finding myself just describing a feeling musically or whatever, and not necessarily just following a pattern. But for me, it's a craft that has been somewhat self-taught, though I've had some great teachers. I spent a year and a half in LA doing learning how to write music for film and TV and all, and it was a great experience and loved it. Steven Spielberg never called, but that's
There's still
okay.
a chance.
Nah, he's still got John Williams. But,
Yeah.
I at the point where I realized that I probably wouldn't have a career in Hollywood, there's still plenty of opportunities to use music, and I found and discovered some other ways to use my music. So that was great.
So with that, then, how would you describe your style of music? Do you hear that mostly? Do you have other styles that you dive into?
I'm sure I have. Inevitably, you're going to find your own style. People hear my music and say, I could tell that was yours right from the start. And every composer we lock into our own way of doing things. But I love lots of different music styles and genres, and part of the training in LA was to learn how to write in the different genres, what gives it the shape that it does, and rhythmic patterns, and as well as melodic and chordal patterns that you use in music. So, and that's part of the storytelling, and that has served me well, because when we were doing Quigley's Village, for example, if I needed a song that sounded like it had a Latin or Hispanic kind of feel to it. I knew what it would need to do that, what kind of pattern the song would probably go in and all. If it needed to be more jazz or more country or whatever, there's certain things that you learn in the craft that you apply to it, and then you expand on it. The biggest fear of any composer, any songwriter is that you've just written somebody else's song or something that you've written before, which I've done many times, where all of a sudden I realize, well, I've already written this in some form or another.
Sure.
My brain's not that good. So, so with that, it is, you always check and see, okay, is this sound too much like this pop song or this hymn or this whatever else that might be out there. So,
yeah, it's with all of the different types of writing that you've done, you have, I don't even know how many, so many in the Covenant hymnal, right. But you also have all of the songs that you wrote for Quigley's Village, which are more children's songs. You also have written a musical and produced that.
3.
You've done 3 musicals. Let's keep that in mind. 3. Like, I don't even know how you begin to outline all of this. So with Quigley's Village, let's start there. You're how old when you did that?
When we first started, I would have been 33, maybe.
So you're a year younger than me, and something pops into your head. I want to create a children's video series.
Yep. And it wasn't. It was sort of like that, but it wasn't. I was working in Houston at the time, where you were born, yep. And had a group of people that I was working with to help plant churches in Houston, and we needed to find a funding source, and so in order to do that, I went to a local TV producer, a channel, and said, "Hey, if I produced a TV show for you, would you put it on the air?" And there was a couple of reasons why that would be good, because it would help us in the connection with the community and even then make some money. And so we raised some money. We put together a nice little show and had it edited and ready to go. And I went back to the station, and they went out of business.
Oh no. So
when they're out of business, all of a sudden we've got all of this work and investment into the show that we produced, and nobody else wanted it. And it was like, okay, I just wasted everybody's time. I wasted this investment of money, and now what do we do? Well, less than 6 months later, the guy that I hired to direct called me and said, "Hey, I made a connection with a guy out at the NAMM show that he's looking for some talent to put together a show that would teach values to kids. And I thought of you guys in Houston. What do you think?" And within 6 months, we were doing the pilot of Quigley's Village. So.
Spending the day here at Quigley's Village, getting to know other kids like you.
So it was. So I flew out to LA, or to San Francisco, and met with them. On the plane trip back, I had pretty much all of the characters mapped out as to what we were going to do and what the village would look like, and kind of gave some boundaries to how we would approach it and what we were going to need to get from here to there. So it was probably the best plane trip I've ever taken.
On the plane, you created the characters?
Yeah.
Well, here we go. We have one of them with us. Okay, so quick sidebar. When we were helping you pack after your retirement for your move, I found this box of Danny. This is Lemon, one of the characters from Quigley's Village. These are, did you sell these to just people?
Yeah. We were, we were distributing the video series throughout the world. And so we got these toys made for kids. They're actually puppets that we included in some of the big series boxes. You know.
I mean, when I saw this, I was like, yes, this is so amazing, because it was kind of like a Sesame Street in a sense, where there were puppets. So all of these characters that you created on that plane ride ended up being puppets, and you were Mr. Quigley, who guided people through their journeys and the different lessons that you were learning. And Mom was in an episode or two. And what was her character?
She was Mrs. Lingonberry, which she didn't show up very often.
Mrs. Lingonberry, Mom's in the background.
And Alex and Mrs. Lingonberry for making these terrific looking sandwiches.
Mrs. Lingonberry was an important role in that, but she didn't make that many appearances.
She didn't want to, and for good reason, because she had to take care of me. As you know, video is done never in sequence for the kind of shooting that we were doing. And so we would be on one set and we would shoot all of the scenes that would be on that set. Well, that meant that I had to change shirts every time we did a new take or a new part of the script. And I had to learn a different part of the script. And so she took care of me while she was taking care of Kyle, your brother, and you along the way too when we were doing shooting.
She was wearing all the hats.
She wore all the hats.
And she even made it into some episodes. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, she was great help.
How did you come up with the storylines? And just tell me about your creation process and how you're thinking through this.
You got to remember, in the mid 80s, the big shows at that time were certainly Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers. They had the most influence in children's television. And we recognized that if we were going to do this, we needed to learn from the best. And so we studied really hard what they were doing and how they were doing it to make sure that, not that we were copying them, but that, for example, Fred Rogers, lowest tech puppetry, probably nothing about what he was flashy. Right. But what connected with people was that he was very real. He was very honest. He was very slow and gentle. It was not a fast-paced cartoon kind of thing, but he always connected well. And so we recognized that in teaching values, if we're going to work with children in this way, we needed to lean towards what Fred did with Mr. Rogers, and make sure that we are not turning it into a hyper thing. But at the same time, we also wanted to do what Sesame Street did so well, which was to make it fun, because parents would inevitably be watching these as well. And so not that you put adult jokes in, right, but that you make it entertaining so that it's got some depth of field for the story and all. We recognize that we wanted to have a story that lasted throughout each episode, and developed characters and developed conflict and resolution that made sense for how to teach these values and all. And that was great fun. And because none of us had ever done it before, we made some mistakes along the way too. But even looking back on them now, 30 plus years later, you recognize, you know what? Those were pretty good. And the stories still live. And we wanted to make sure that, we weren't talking about our current president who was Jimmy Carter or something like that, so that it dated it right away. We wanted it to have some evergreen life to it. But it did have life, and the videos were eventually translated into 5 different languages and sold all over the world. And we were on CBN or one of the Christian broadcasting networks for well over 13 years. Every Saturday morning, they kept running the same things over and over. So,
well, clearly people enjoyed it, and that's why 13 years straight. There are so many things that are impressive about this, but I always go back to, that was the first time that you had done something like that maybe all of you who were pulling in, then the puppeteers that you had, all of your friends and all of that. How did you go about like writing the screenplay for it? And the thing also that stood out for me so much was the music. Being able, like, these songs pop into my head to this day.
And now it's time to go to sleep.
Like, you gotta be brave. Like all these songs, and now it's time to go to sleep. Like all these songs where it just randomly is in your subconscious because you watch it all the time as a kid, and it sticks with you. And I think that has added so much value to people's lives because you're entertained, you're hearing these great stories, but you're also audibly hearing these things through music, and that kind of thing makes a lasting impact. So how did you go about that when you didn't have any prior experience? You didn't have Google either.
No, we didn't have Google, that's for sure. And this would be an encouragement to you and to anybody who has a dream about something. You just try. You just start. You might not end up like we didn't end up doing that show in Houston because everything fell apart and it felt at that time like a failure. But what came from it was that we had enough experience now to know we can write scripts. We can apply our music to this. We can do these things. And even though we don't know all the ins and outs of how to do it, you stick your neck out, you try something, you fail maybe sometimes, but then you do find that there are paths that you could never have found otherwise had you not started. So, I mean, to start a podcast, you never know where that's going to take you and who's going to be listening along the way, but you do it anyway because you've got something to say, something valuable to say and to do, and you enjoy the process while you're doing it.
That's really encouraging because I know a lot of times in my own life and just in talking to other people, it's scary to start, right? There's so much opportunity to fail, and no one wants to fail, and they want instant gratification with it. But from all of the things that you've done, enjoying the process of it is a huge thing too.
Yep. You enjoy the creative process.
Yes.
Yeah. Let that be enough reward. Mm-hmm. If the only reward you're looking for is the financial, you're probably going to be disappointed because more times than not, the financial is not going to be there, at least immediately. Right. But you've got to enjoy the process of writing. And for me, as frankly an introvert, I enjoy the process of being by myself with, whether it's pen and paper or computer or whatever it is, and just enjoying the creative process. That feeds me.
It's you're always working on something. I love every time we get to hang out because you're like, okay, listen to this. Let me know what you think. And it's a new novel idea. Or a couple years ago, you created this Christmas game that we played that was so cool. I mean, it was based on Charles Dickens. Is that how you describe it? Yeah. And we had all of these different activities and pieces that led us down this experience. And like, you made this in your free time? I mean, this is something that people spend their life's work on. And you're just always thinking of how can I create something that is new and different and entertaining and tells a great story. And something that frustrates me about today's day and age is people are creating things, they're creating content, but it's kind of regurgitating, this person did this, so I'm going to do the same thing. And we're all just kind of like copying each other in one way or another to create these viral trends. And I understand absolutely things change over time and things gravitate in different directions.
Sure.
But also art is important, and creativity is something that we all need to keep practicing to just not only be entertained, but to be moved.
Right. Good for you. And that's exactly what, if you are moved by the seed of an idea, not to make a dollar, but to make art, to step into something that maybe you haven't been able to do before or experience in, but you learn. And you're going to fail sometimes. And let me count the ways. And many times where a big project idea or song or story or whatever just collapsed on me. That's happened a lot, but that's okay. You learn from it, and what I found too is that nothing is wasted. You know, there are times, and this has happened even recently, where I wrote a song, and I knew it was a good song, but I had no place to send it or to use it for or whatever. 10 years later, I'm working on something. I remember that, and all of a sudden it fits. Nothing's wasted. Or I had a great melody and had lyrics to it that worked for one thing, but I realized, hey, if I write new lyrics, all of a sudden it becomes a whole new thing. So I'm convinced, and this is probably the part that drives my wife Pat crazy, is that since nothing is wasted, that means I fill up the garage with lots of pieces of paper and stuff that I've done over the years that I refuse to get rid of because I don't want to lose it.
Well, that's interesting that you bring that up, because when we were helping you pack for moving after retirement, there is such a difference to me between just boxes of my plastic basketball trophies and your sheet music that is handwritten songs that have, transformed so many people's lives. I'm keeping that box. It's those, you can get rid of my trophies. It's not junk that's taking up the garage. That's true art. And I can't wait to have it all digitally and being able to have that, if you have different musicians create it so that I can listen to it. Your handwriting is the coolest handwriting in the world. So I love being able to see it, but I want to be able to hear it and experience it. So
tell your mom that.
Yeah, I'll pass it along. She's like, honey, you need to get rid of all these boxes.
I don't blame her. Yeah.
But we'll get to it. That's a project eventually. But
sure.
But I opened just box after box after box, and what are they called? 8 tracks or 8 tracks?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, not 8 tracks, but cassettes and all kinds of recordings that I haven't know what to do with. I don't even have the equipment anymore to, play them back. But.
And the orchestra songs that you've written for entire orchestras and all of the different parts and harmonies. I mean, I can't wait to hear all these things. So that's another project that you get to add to your list.
Yeah, along the way.
Along the way. Dad, do you have any certain habits or disciplines that you've developed over the years that have helped your creativity?
Probably the one thing that I've forced myself to do is that when I do get a germ of an idea, I make myself write it down. Because if I say to myself, "Oh, I'll just remember that," it's probably not going to happen. So there are many times where I'll wake up in the middle of the night with something going through my head, and I literally grab my phone or something and say the phrase or say the whatever, just to make sure that I can do that. Because when I get back to it, if the seed is still good and it's there, then something can come from it, and I can craft, whether it's a piece of music or a storyline or whatever it is. You just never know what's going to be. So the discipline of making sure you gather your seeds and protect them from yourself is always a good idea. And some of my best melodies have come in the middle of the night, or emerged from the seeds that I gathered in the middle of the night. So I know there are, for instance, artists who constantly, they see something interesting and they just do a quick sketch to make sure that they got it. You grab those seeds when they're there and protect them, and then you can apply them and plant them and nurture them through the craft of whatever you do, whether it is whatever art form it would be. So that's probably the one thing that I know that has been a discipline in my life, because I've lost lots of good seeds of ideas that could and probably should have been nurtured.
Well, you saved plenty of them because they've created incredible things. Dennis and I were just having a conversation about this, where you have an idea when you're asleep and you kind of wake up, and it might have been in the Rick Rubin book. Was it in the Rick Rubin book that you're reading? Yeah. Where it's like, if you have an idea, just have that notepad or your phone or whatever right next to your bed, and don't even try to move, because sometimes even just turning your head can kind of bring you out of that state where you're experiencing whatever that thought or idea is. I never remember my dreams, and I never remember things unless if I write it down right away. So I feel you on that, because it's so easy to forget, but you just never know what it can turn into.
You would not want to listen to my phone where you can actually record yourself. Yeah. Because I will often hum a melody or something, but there are just some awful, I'm riding the car and it's, oh my God. But it's saving those seeds. It is. And it almost, it doesn't matter. Obviously I've heard, in some Taylor Swift songs, she'll share extra recordings of her initial iterations of a song. And it is so cool to hear. Here's the initial spark of whatever this idea was and what it turned into. Mm-hmm. It's incredible to be able to see that creative process. And I love that kind of stuff. And you mentioned the car. I just over the years, sometimes Mom will say, I'm driving on a road trip, because you're thinking, you're writing in your head, you're dreaming of something. And then all of a sudden we're going 20 miles an hour under the speed limit. It takes us about 5 hours longer to get wherever we're going if we're on a road trip. I'm probably not the best at multitasking. No, but we get there eventually. Yeah. But you're creating magic in your head. But that's why Mom is a great road trip driver. Well, and she is. And she's also very tolerant of my idiosyncrasies of when I'm in the creative process. She can see it in my eyes. And recognizes, okay, you're not here, are you? Yeah. Yeah. And that's good. To have a wife and partner like that, who not only supports you, but helps kind of foster that in you. And encourages it. Yeah. And she's never said, you don't have time now. She always makes sure that I can do what I need to do. And I hopefully am careful to not abuse that along the way too, but that's impossible. Who knows? So after Quigley's Village, you in your 40s, you got the call to be a pastor, and then you went to seminary and started this whole new chapter where storytelling is a huge piece of what you've done. And you're not up there
I don't want to say just preaching, because obviously there's so much that goes into every different style of a person's craft, but you do so much more than just delivering 20 minutes of words. Every week is different, and you're incorporating personal stories, parables, other stories you've written, readers theater, which I have never seen any other person do in that capacity. So how, week after week, do you find the creativity after 26 years?
Yeah, well, I am amazed at preachers and teachers and people who have applied that craft so well. And I took the crafting, the creative crafting of music and storytelling into the pastoral ministry and recognized right away that this was helpful, that the disciplines and the work that I had done was helpful. But in order to do pastoral ministry and to make that shift, because it was a huge shift in our life, we had to make some pretty big decisions, and one of the decisions was I sold all of my music equipment, every keyboard, anything that had to do with music. And
we had a recording studio in our basement.
Yeah, we built the house around a recording studio idea, and in many ways I came kicking and screaming into pastoral ministry. I really loved what I was doing. But I knew that if I was going to do the pastor thing to the best of my ability, I could not do both. And I could not allow myself to think that I could do both. And so by selling everything, that was the right thing at the right time. We sold the equipment, sold the house, and I went full-fledged into seminary as a 42-year-old or whatever I was then, to go into classes with all the 22-year-olds was kind of weird. But it was the right thing to do. And it wasn't until almost 12 years later that I really sensed God saying, okay, it's okay to write music now. You can do that. And so I went out and I bought a little $50 controller, keyboard controller, and plugged it into my Mac computer and started writing songs again and doing some simple arrangements and rediscovering that part of the right side of my brain, which was really, really fun and freeing for me. And then, so for the last 15 years or so, I've been able to incorporate the work in music as well as pastoral ministry in lots of different ways, and it's been great. And so now in retirement, I'm freed up to explore, and I don't know where that's going to take me. We'll see.
It's so exciting though to say, okay, now I have all this extra time where you have given so much to so many people over the years. Now to say, okay, what can we create? And you're retired, quote unquote, but it just in the conversations we even had this morning, you have so many cool ideas in the pipeline, and it's almost like, okay, it's all going to happen, but what do you want to do first? That you've had so many different careers and levels, and utilize your creativity to make amazing things in all of the processes. But this next chapter, I'm so excited for you.
Oh, thank you. I am too. There's a little bit of fear and trepidation as to what's next and all, but that's okay. We've stepped out into nothingness many times, and as a family, we never knew where we were going to end up sometimes because of just the uncertainty of life. But now I know that I still have the energy and the creative juices to try some new things. Whatever time I have on this earth, I'm going to apply them well. As long as I have the capacity to write and to create and to try things that are outside of my current experience, I'm going to try it. So it's good.
That's so inspiring because it's never over as long as you still are willing to try and willing to get out there and create things. And you mentioned there's maybe a little bit of fear in that, but I think that can be used as a powerful tool. Like a little, we don't want to live in paralyzing fear. That's not a healthy place to be. But thinking about when I was an athlete, yeah, you had those pregame butterflies, a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of unknown. You don't know what's going to happen exactly, but you know you're going to show up. You've put in the work. You have confidence in your skill set to be able to perform at your best. Not everything's going to be a winning game, but it's still a fun and exciting adventure in the process.
Let's talk about success for a second. The measure of success for whatever endeavor, whether it is sports or business or a creative, whatever, is not necessarily that everybody's standing up and applauding or that there is some financial reward that goes with it. Sometimes it is just that you have blessed somebody. You have created something that others can dream in, and they don't even know who you are. Sometimes it is just recognizing in yourself that you did your best. Well, great. Let that be the reward. And whether the financial or the applause or some kind of Academy Award or something else comes, well, that's fine. But it's okay to make somebody else's day, to recognize I did my best and it was good enough. And I really like that song, or I like how that story turned out, or I like this painting. Whether or not anybody else wants to buy it, it doesn't matter. I liked it. That's success.
Yes, I need to personally take that in. And I know that's important for a lot of people because success doesn't have to be just one thing. And it's easy to feel boxed in and have to continue climbing the ladder and whatever that means to you. But if you do it for the love of it and you're proud of what you do, great things are going to happen. And sometimes that's just a feeling of accomplishment. And that's more than enough.
Yeah.
So if you weren't doing what you're doing, what kind of way would you be spending your time, or what kind of job would you have?
If I were to be back to your age, I would be standing on the doorstep of Disney and become an Imagineer.
Cool.
That's, to be in a place where they have the resources to do anything. How fun would that be? But the road that I took, I know was not traveled and has not been traveled by many, and nobody could take it but me. Nobody could experience the failures that I experienced or the successes that I experienced, but me. That's the way God made me. And and my encouragement to especially the young and those who are just trying to find their way is just start. Don't block yourself from trying something that might be really hard. It's okay to do things that are really hard because they will get easier. And there's going to be people that are going to tell you you're no good and it's not worth it and there's no financial reward and all. That's going to happen. I've had plenty of people tell me that they hated my stuff. And
Me too.
didn't think that I was worth it. Well, that's okay. Thanks for your opinion. I'm
Right.
moving on.
And on to the next. Yeah, it's tough to develop thick skin sometimes, but if you just start, it will get better. It will get easier.
Yeah.
And like you were saying earlier, one thing can lead to the next. One seed can turn into something completely different.
Yeah. And with that, you can't know what seed you plant, what is going to grow from that. And sometimes it's just dumb weeds, and you throw them away. But you just never know when something really amazing happens. And the friendships that are developed along the way. I've worked with some amazing, wonderful people that have inspired me to be better and taught me things that I could never have imagined. And those partnerships I cherish to this day because they made me better, and I hope that I made them better along the way too.
Yeah, it's cool that you have a few friends who you have had as certainly just best friends. You hang out, but also writing partners. And you like Bob and Mike are two people that come to mind, Bob Strongberg and Mike Donnelly, where you have so much fun together, but you also bring out the best in each other creatively and give feedback to each other where you're not saying, oh, this is a bad song or this is a bad lyric, but you just help make the song the best that it could be.
Right. That, and for someone who has written by myself a lot, to work with a partner is a very different skill set, actually, because you are often giving up an idea to take on their idea. But ultimately, the song or the story or the film or the whatever is better. And so to learn that collaborative mindset and take yourself out of it, get your ego out of it, is going to take you a long way further than you would have on your own. Some of the best songs that I've participated in a collaborative are much better than I would have ever done by myself.
Do you have any favorite songs that you've written? It doesn't have to be just one.
Yeah, there's some that I come back to that I feel like this was an inspiration that I didn't know was there. That feels good. There are arrangements, music arrangements that I've done that I just go, where did that come from? How in the world did I hear that at that time? I don't know if I could have ever done that again, but that's part of the joy of it. There are stories that I've written where it actually brings me to tears, and I go, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Where I know what the ending is going to be, but it still moved me. That surprise of the creative process is something that you hang on to and you cherish and are thankful for.
And the cool thing is, it's a brand new beginning, and you get to continue to do that. And I can't wait to see all of the wonderful things that you continue to create. It's such a joy for me to obviously have you as a father, but also just as someone that I look up to, see the creativity continue day after day. So I'm very excited for the next chapter.
Thank you. I am too. And your encouragement and Dennis and obviously Pat to not be afraid of what would come out of my head is always an encouragement along the way. So at some point you'll probably have to say, Dad, you got to stop. This is no good.
Well, I doubt that day ever comes, but we will be honest collaborative partners along the way. So we'll make sure that we hold each other accountable to that.
Good.
Well, Dad, this was so fun. Is there anything else that you wanted to share as a part of this?
Nothing other than I'm proud of you and thankful for the the creative courage that you have shown in the work that you guys do. You're making a difference in people's lives, in people that you will probably never meet, and they may not be able to communicate that to you, but keep going. Don't be afraid of the unknowns that are ahead, and taking some chances along the way. Not everything's going to be successful in the world's view, but certainly in my view, it's all successful because you're trying and you're doing something that is coming from who you are, and that's a beautiful thing. So whether it's creating the best exercise program that's ever been done, or having the best interview that's ever done, or acting in a great superhero movie, whatever those things are, just keep doing it, and I'm cheering you on.
Thank you. I will take that with me. Oh, well, thank you so much, and I can't wait for more people to hear about your journey.
Thank you. This is fun.
So much fun. Thank you, Dad.
You're welcome.
We already have some great episodes in the queue for you, and I cannot wait to share them. So make sure you are subscribed to this channel so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. And whether you're watching the video or the audio, make sure you share this with a friend, because we want to share this with as many people as possible to help encourage and give the tips and the insights for the habits and the discipline so that we can all become great together. So thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you soon.